All right, welcome to On the Bench. I'm your host for this episode, Brendan Sonnone, joined by Zach Blostein. Chris is on the actual bench today, so it's just the two of us, buddy. How's it going?
It's going well. Chris is living by the name.
This is why we are on the bench, just because someone is always on the bench. Usually Chris, but sometimes we're there as well.
I'm trying to
Usually
convince
Zach.
him not to go to the bench as much so we can kind of, switch off a little bit.
Yeah, but there's a big reason to be on the bench today, and that's because a
There
five-star
is.
safety is chilling there. We'll get into that in a little bit. Don't want to jump ahead. I'll take care of jumping ahead with Chris being out. We are going to get into a lot of recruiting updates from a big weekend, as well as spring scrimmage scoop. I was trying to get some alliteration there, Zach. Not easy to say. I think that'll probably be our starting place. We want to talk about FSU's second scrimmage, what happened there, some takeaways, some intel, all that good stuff. I'll start off, man. Jordan Travis. I think he's going to be pretty good.
Efficient.
Efficient. Yes, an efficient day. So he basically was supposed to go into the scrimmage. The first one, they held him out. We told you it wasn't a huge deal. I know some people wanted to chicken little it a little bit, but no, it wasn't a big deal. The second scrimmage, they were going to give him a little bit more of an expanded role in a true game setting. It wasn't going to be situational stuff. It was going to be leading like actual real drives. And the plan was to lead a couple drives. Well, when you're pretty much perfect in leading a drive, there's no longer anything to see, kind of. So Jordan Travis was so flawless in how he executed FSU's offense's first drive. They took him out, Zach. I mean, that's maybe the best way I can sum it up is how good he was.
It was a 12-play drive, right?
Yeah, about that.
That's pretty crazy. That's good to hear, though. For me, like I don't really understand the gripe with people getting mad over him not participating in the first scrimmage. I mean, we know what we're getting out of Jordan Travis, and it's good that they got him a little bit of work in a live setting like that this go around. But for me, I'm not one to really care much about him participating in these types of practices. But yeah, I want to hear more. Obviously, we know Jordan took care of business and handled himself well on that one drive. But how did the other quarterbacks do? Was there maybe a step back from last week's scrimmage from that group?
Yeah, I think describing Jordan as doing well might be an understatement. And he was literally legitimately described to me as great by a couple different people, and just he was nearly flawless. So, and as great as Jordan Travis was, Zach, the quarterbacks around him did seemingly take a step back. Now, with most scrimmage settings, there's always some nuance that's needed. Maybe shorthanded at some spots on the offensive line. Now, Trey Benson and Lawrence Toafili were full go and no contact. They both ran well, broke some tackles. And so you did have help around you that you didn't have maybe a week ago, but the offensive line maybe being a little short-handed, I think does present some issues for your backup quarterbacks. But what it sounded like in the coaches, what they were talking about on record with Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins on Saturday, as well as speaking to some sources this weekend afterwards, it sounded like it was a lot of unforced errors, Zach. And I think that was fairly spread around through Tate Rodemaker, Brock Glenn, and AJ Duffy. Like, I don't think it was one more than the other or anything like that. It was a lot of those guys just didn't make the throws that they need to, and then maybe pressed at times as well. So certainly a regression. One practice, one day sample set and out of 15 this spring, again with some different variables to throw around there. But all the good that we heard about Brock Glenn coming out of the first one, for there to be a bit of regression, yeah, it's been a while since we've really tried to judge a true freshman in the context of Brock Glenn, of someone who is legitimately like pushing to move up the depth chart in a hurry. Obviously the cap is Jordan Travis at number one, right? But so we are judging this at a slightly different scale, I think, than we have in the past. But yeah, it just didn't sound like any of the quarterbacks performed that well. Again, I'm not here to sound any alarms or anything like that, but it was not an optimal day. A lot of turnovers and unforced errors, which you don't want to hear about when you're talking about offensive efficiency.
Yeah, I think it'll be important to kind of see how they respond this week. Obviously, we'll get to be out there tomorrow on Tuesday, get to see how those other three quarterbacks respond to not a great day at the scrimmage. But like you said, it's one practice, so certainly a lot of time for them to, like I said, respond. Moving on to the running back group. Heard one dude had a big day, maybe a little bit more contact for some of the other guys on the in that room, just kind of what do the running backs do on Saturday?
Yeah, it sounded like there was a lot of good moments for the running backs. I mentioned Lawrence Toafili earlier. He's someone that it's funny. I feel like Lawrence is so, I guess, momentum based, where a good week of practice for him usually points to a really good game for him. I think of Clemson 2 years ago, where he was starting to come on at that point in the season, then had the long touchdown catch, the wheel route. Lawrence Toawili, shout out to Seminoles 24/7 ID. Much better than your nickname, Zach. But LT was having a really good scrimmage or really good practice on Thursday. I thought it was just by far, like, you just felt his presence the most of any day. And it's tough because the running backs do wear green a lot of the time, as they did the last scrimmage. So it's hard, or the first scrimmage, I should say. So it's hard to kind of sift through like what's a real play, what's shot down dead, before it gets going. But watching Lawrence operate between the tackles on Thursday was really encouraging, because you saw this control and that patented dead leg of his, the ability to create space, right, and tight quarters. Really impressive there. It sounds like he was even better on Saturday. We're not there to see it, but from what I can gather, like he was making those same kind of nifty moves over and over again. Had himself a great day. So that's awesome. You want to see continued growth from Lawrence Toafili, a little bit bigger than he was last year, seemingly more comfortable running between the tackles. That's a really good step. Trey Benson, I was told he broke some tackles, did some good things as well. We didn't hear as much from Rodney Hill this past scrimmage as we did the previous one. He was one of the stars of the last scrimmage, Zach. Again, I think that was a matter of like the offensive line. He kind of was running behind and a little bit more difficult at times for him. But when opportunity calls, someone's going to step up. In this case, it was CJ Campbell. He apparently was fantastic, and multiple big runs, ran with a lot of good control, I was told. His burst when he gets to the second level stands out. I know that's something that we've seen in person as well. And we kind of forget about CJ Campbell sometimes, Zach, but like, I don't know. I think he's not atop the pecking order for running backs, but like we shouldn't forget him. He shouldn't be just like a little asterisk when you're talking about the running back room, because there's something like legitimately there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it to me. Like CJ is not elite in any one aspect of his game, but he's like pretty darn good at all aspects of being a running back. And I think that's on display at pretty much every practice. And it's good to see him shine in a scrimmage setting, where he's able to get out there and get live reps. We saw it even during the 2022 season in garbage time. I mean, he was running over some of those defenses, which was a good sign. So, yeah, I mean, the running back room we know is a pretty loaded group. And it's good to see, even if you move to the third, fourth, fifth spots in that depth chart, whoever that might be, those guys are shining.
Definitely. And we talked about that on the pod before, man. Like the culture of the running back room seems as good as any position group.
Yeah.
It just, those guys support each other. As a nice blend of skill sets, talents. Keziah Holmes has taken some really good reps this spring as well. So they have 5 legitimate players. And I know there's like a talking point, a narrative out there that those guys, how are they going to keep them all happy? I mean, that is a good problem to have, but they do support each other. And I don't know if like having 5 capable running backs on a roster going into like preseason camp, for example, like I don't think that's going to push any of them away. Like this is healthy. This is what a lot of running back rooms look like around the country, is where you have 4 or 5 guys. Like it's not always just 3. Like, so I don't know if anyone's going to get scared away, going to get spooked away this offseason. Like I don't have that indication that's something that we have on our radar right now. I think there's ample opportunity for 3 or 4 guys, and then what's it? Sam Singleton.
Sam Singleton, yeah,
Singleton.
He'll arrive in the summer.
Yeah, well, he'll arrive in the summer, so there will be 6. But like, no, it's a really good group, diverse skill set, and guys who all seem pretty competitive, but do support each other as well, which is important, obviously.
Yeah, I think an interesting part of that group, just an extra add-on to this conversation, is pretty much every time we talk to one of their running backs in like a post-practice setting, they always mention that they take parts of each other's games and like add it to their own game. So like when Trey Benson first got here, he was learning a lot from Trayshawn Ward. And then Rodney Hill, we talked to him a few weeks ago. And he talked about how he took things from Trayshawn, from Trey, just all the guys in that room. Keziah talked about that as well. So I think that's an encouraging sign. And David Johnson does a good job of kind of cultivating that culture within that specific room. And they they seem like a unit that moves together. I mean, we watch them before practice; they all run in together every time. That's a unique thing. No other position group does that besides them. So, yeah, I think that's like you said, the culture in that room is thriving right now.
By our Sonnone, Zach, sponsored by the Turner Group, we see Trey Benson hit the Lawrence Toafili dead leg at some point this season. He's taking something from that
Bye.
specific game. Bye. Oh my God. Could you imagine 220 pounds of a dead leg cut and go? By the way, I did forget to shout out our OTB sponsor at the top of the podcast, Chattanooga Whiskey. Zach's holding up a bottle now for those listening, not watching. Have you gotten into it yet, Zach?
I have not.
You're gonna have to. So I went over to the Casa de Ni this weekend, hung out with Chris and his boys.
What did you just say?
Casa de Ni.
I think you said Casse, didn't you?
Casa de Ni. That sounded more French. Casa de Ni. What do you mean? And sorry if anyone's French. I don't think that was offensive.
I'm offended.
We went canceled. I went over to Chris's house and we watched WrestleMania as well as UConn beat Miami. Go Huskies. As a UConn boy, or as a Connecticut boy here, not UConn. I'm a Connecticut boy. Great to get a win. A lot of UConn fans in Tallahassee on Saturday, but I brought over Chattanooga Whiskey, both the 111, because I want Chris to be complaining anymore about him getting shorted on the delivery, where you, Dane, and I all took bottles for ourselves. So I brought over a remainder of my 111 as well as a single barrel that I'd gotten from a local distributor, Pat Davis, like way back, like 2 or 3 years ago when we first started talking to each other. He wanted me to try a bottle. It was exquisite, made me fall in love with the brand. If anyone has access to like their single barrel program, they deliver some absolute bangers at Chattanooga Whiskey. Chris said he was going to have a pour, indulge himself, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, Zach. It was so good, he may have gone back for a second or third.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, shout out Chattanooga Whiskey, our sponsor. Let's get back on track here. What do we want to talk about now?
Let's move to the receiver group.
Let's talk about receivers. Yeah. How about my new King of the Spring ranking, Zach? Has your boy number 1 atop it?
Yeah, I mean, I warned you last week. I told you what was going to happen, and look who's atop the list now. Why was he up there for you?
Kentron Porter is number 1 on our Volume 2 power rankings of King of the Spring, and it is a combination of what he did in the first 6 or so practices, blended with what he did this past week, of just a level of consistency that we have not seen from him before, Zach. I don't think he was as explosive this past week as he was the previous week, but where some other guys around him maybe took like noticeable steps back or just you didn't feel their presence as much. Like for Tron, like you still felt it and you still could sense like that he was someone who was impacting the defense, whether it was his vertical ability, perimeter blocking. I think it was you or Dane noticed him doing some good work on the perimeter in one of the practices earlier last week. And he had a couple big catches on Saturday that were called back due to penalties. But like, again, like he is impacting the offense in an efficient way. He's putting pressure on the defense. He's someone who has seemed to leveled up this spring and someone who we thought could, like, he's not coming completely out of nowhere. He had about 200 or so receiving yards last year, some really good moments against Clemson, Florida, in big games, but like now we're seeing it consistently. And I thought it was worth rewarding him to be number 1 of the power rankings. He goes into the final stretch or so of the spring, like atop the list, and it's King of the Spring is his to lose, buddy. It's his to lose, and I think he's got a really good chance to come away with the crown that we don't give anyone.
That would be such an honor.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think he's really elevated his game, and I think it was John Papuchis actually talked about it. Him being a guy that's drastically improved year over year. I mean, this is a guy that started playing football his junior year of high school. Mm-hmm. So this isn't a guy like most of these guys on any college roster that you'll see where they've been playing football their entire life. I mean, he's somewhat new to it. He's been playing it for 4 years now. So I think he's got a good shot to hold the crown when spring ball ends, and what an honor that would be, like I said. But
what an honor. It's what every recruit in the country grows up wanting. They don't care about a 5th star. No, it's not the stars they care about. It's not whether they're a top 247 guy. It's, hey, can I come to Florida State and be the King of the Spring?
Yeah. Crowned by Brendan Sonnone himself. Johnny Wilson had a pretty impressive catch on Saturday. I think you wrote about that play or talked or did something on our site. I didn't really read it. Sorry.
Thanks.
But Yeah, he had a pretty impressive catch. So what happened there?
How about a pretty impressive camp? Like he
Yeah.
is he's been exquisite. And I was talking to someone earlier today just about the wide receiver room and uh, different guys they like and kind of projecting ahead. And I I just thought of Johnny Wilson and was like, by the way, like he's just become a ridiculously well-rounded wide receiver in such a short span. And that sentiment I think was agreed on, Zach. Like he was and I'll get into the play in a second, but for context, like last spring we saw him show some really great signs, right? Like a lot of flashes and like seemed like he was gonna be this really fun specialist, like this jump ball, back shoulder fade, 50-50 guy. And then during this past season, we saw that. We saw him be able to take the top off of defense too, actually have some like speed once he gets a little head of steam. Uh, and now this spring, he's becoming a guy who just seems to catch the ball all over the field. Like it intermediate, short, deep, in the middle of the hashes, like outside perimeter stuff. Like he is doing so much, so well, so consistently. I think we've only seen one day where he had like the little dropsies, and even that, like knock on wood, wasn't as bad as it was in spurts last camp, last spring, even at times last season. Like he is playing in a manner that is efficient, it is explosive, it is that of a ascending player, which is exciting to think about because he had 800 receiving yards last year, right? And the play on Saturday that you referenced, Zach, was Johnny Wilson getting matched up one-on-one on the perimeter against Renardo Green. And this is what Johnny Wilson does so well. That is win jump balls, right? And it was a back shoulder fade. It was thrown by Jordan Travis. A superb pass, like exactly what you want timing wise. And that was another thing that he was so good at on Saturday for Jordan was just like the delivery of the ball, how he got it out, when he got it out, who he got it out to. Like it was all just like it was perfect. And that was the case on this throw. It was high, it was outside. It allowed for 6'7" Johnny Wilson, Birdman, to go ahead, adjust to the ball. I don't know if Renardo Green could have been any better position. I don't think so. He certainly played the ball well after Johnny got his hands on it, thought through, did exactly what you're coached to do. Johnny Wilson just made a ridiculous catch in that he was able to adjust and contort to the ball in that way. If he's going to do that and Jordan's going to do that this year, like I don't know how many DBs are on the schedule who are going to have a chance to legitimately stop that. Like that is a high percentage, high volume chunk play that you have in your arsenal that you can drop multiple times a game. Like, yeah, man, that's really good stuff. That's going to be fun to watch this season if that continues.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we watch in practice all the time and consistently say, like, how do you stop that? That's impossible to stop. So definitely going to be excited to see, how these ACC defenders plan to stop that if it continues at this rate. So
Can I ask you about someone real quick?
Yeah.
Let's talk about your boy, Hakeem Williams.
Yeah, I've liked what he's done, especially this past week. I think he started off camp a little slower than maybe he wanted to start. I think there's a level of he had to get a little bit more conditioned. Heading into he's obviously an early enrollee, so a guy that left high school early to get to the college level. Went through winter conditioning, tour duty drills with Florida State. And then, we saw him there and, he looked like he was still going through the conditioning process a little bit. I heard there were some days that were tough to finish for him. So, we'll see on his ascension of conditioning. But over the last week, it looks like he's definitely improved. We've noticed him making plays more often, in 7-on, 11-on stuff that they're doing in practice. And then it sounded like in the scrimmage, he made some plays as well, right, Brendan?
Yeah, he was productive in the scrimmage. I don't have my notes right in front of me, Zach, but he was a guy who I was told was fairly consistent. And yeah, it's a continuation of what we saw in the week, which is always good, man. Like when patterns start to develop, like I think that's our main job at being at practice is to note the patterns. What are things that are happening consistently? Like, yeah, we want to document like the really cool, big plays that happen each day, but like it's really about like what are we seeing over time. And you mentioned the conditioning. I think that's a huge deal. Like that I'm not sure why he wasn't in the shape that he would have liked to have been or should have been coming into camp in the spring camp. Regardless, he looks to be caught up now. And I think Dane mentioned that on Tuesday. He's like, he doesn't seem to be huffing and puffing Dane's so observant sometimes. he's remarkable in that aspect. He sees things that no one else sees, and anyways, I find that to be a really good quality in Dane, and I'm happy like he's around at practice for that because he noticed that, and he was like, "Yeah, you're right. Like he's not sucking wind anymore." Is that the kid show? Is that an okay thing? Huffing wind?
Probably change the wording on that, but carry on.
I can't really. I'm not gonna go back and edit this video. Damn it. Anyways, he's not huffing and puffing anymore, and I think when you're like just in like adequate shape as an athlete, like I mean comparatively, like obviously they're all better shape than us, but compared to your peers, like when you're in the same level as them, like you're not at a disadvantage anymore, and you're able to let some of those athletic traits take over. So I really think that's what we're seeing is like the game's slowing down for him mentally. He's getting accustomed to it. He's no longer at a disadvantage from a shape perspective. He's caught up quickly, and now you're seeing like, oh yeah, like he's really like explosive, right? When he takes a step like on a post pattern or something like that, something developing out or up and then cuts in, all of a sudden like it's violent the way he moves, and like that's exciting. That's gonna be fun.
I thought his best rep of practice was in a one-on-one against Renardo Green on Thursday. He was violent at the point, like at the line of scrimmage on his release, had a step on Renardo and won the route. I mean, it was beyond the most impressed I've been of Hakeem against probably FSU's top coverage corner in Renardo Green.
Yeah, there is I mean, it's not a surprise for me to say there's something there, as I'm so fond of saying, Zach, because he was a 5-star recruit. So it's not this revelatory evaluation, but it's nice to see that something show up and for it to progress as quickly as it has. Like that's good. That's cool. That's good to see.
Yeah, and another thing is like whenever I'm watching Hakeem, I swear every time he's doing a one-on-one rep or something in 11 on, Mike Norvell is always in the corner of my eye, ready to, harp on him about something or just fine-tune some specific thing in his route. Like Mike cares about, Hakeem's development. Obviously he cares about everyone on the team, but it's pretty clear that the development of Hakeem Williams is very important to Mike Norvell. And it's something that he's, taking notice of early on is just getting him to be accustomed to this level of competition.
Yeah, I've noticed similarly, Zach. I think that's accurate. Is that Mike is a little bit more detailed on Hakeem than he is for even others, and it's a high level, high standard that he has for everyone. Like he goes out of his way to scold a walk-on linebacker for not being in the right place on a special teams one-on-one rep. Like he'll like legitimately run out of his way to go do that and be like, oh, this needs to be better. Here's what you did wrong. And so, like, yes, he's going to pay a ton of attention to a 5-star wide receiver. Mike puts a lot of emphasis on wide receiver play in general as one. So, yeah, he's going to pay a lot of attention to Hakeem Williams, deservedly so. Like, you need that guy to hit for you. And he's holding Hakeem to a really high standard. And that's, again, I keep finishing off takes or thoughts Zach was saying, like, that's good or that's exciting. But, like, it is. Like, this program just keeps impressing me with how it's being operated right now.
Yeah. Another guy I wanted to note on is a guy you wrote about in the scrimmage intel piece about Winston Wright. You said he was a little bit more active, more less limited, I guess, in this scrimmage.
Yeah. He to be fair, like I don't remember being told one way or the other about him the previous scrimmage. So for context there, but he was full go and allowed to do contact and everything, and apparently had a nice chunk play early on, I think in that opening drive, or at least pretty early on in the practice, what I was told. So like, yeah, I mean, he's going to be someone who should be a factor, him and Ja'Kai Douglas as possible slot guys this year. Guys, you can move around to other places too, not relegate to only the slot, but he is, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. He looked at the start of spring like someone who could help you this season. I think at this point, I'm fairly well convinced that he will help you. To the capacity, I don't know, but like he's going to be a factor for them this season, which is, I mean, that's like, I didn't know that would be the case. I didn't know that would be the case when last season ended. And at this stage is where nine practices through spring. Yeah, man, he's going to help you out to some extent or another. Maybe push for a starting spot. We will see.
Yeah, I agree. Offensive line, anything to note there?
I mentioned earlier that it was kind of a mixed bag with the offensive line in terms of just even like the rotations. And Alex Atkins, I don't think I'm talking out of school. Like Alex Atkins talked about this in his media availability afterwards. He wants to make guys uncomfortable. Like It's funny. I thought that Thursday was one of their better days run blocking collectively as a group because there was a lot of big runs, and you get that when things are being blocked up correctly. And when guys start to get comfortable, my man likes to reshuffle the deck on them, and that's what spring's for. I think is a lot of testing. Alex likes to test. I said testing. He likes to test his offensive lineman, and I think that's kind of what we gathered from Saturday was that there were a lot of guys moved around different spots. So yeah, that makes it in a vacuum like kind of difficult to judge that one off, right? But some feedback I got: one, Darius Washington keeps just being really solid. Talk about a guy who gets moved all over the place. Like I don't think this is again talking out of turn. Like he's someone that the staff believes can play any single position on the offensive line. So it makes sense if you were to hear about him playing at any single spot at any given point this spring to figure that out. But like he's passed every test they've thrown at him and just like trying to make him a little uncomfortable and move him around. And he's handled that competition from incoming players well, like the transfers and stuff. Casey Roddick, we continue to hear just really good things about him. Grown man. You get to see him sometimes when he's I think he still needs to get in a little bit better shape, Zach, just from my observations of him in practice. But like his good moments are really good. Like when he's able to pull and get into space and like is confident in his movement skills, he's able to clean up some defenders with the way he blocks, and he legit moves people. Byers, some up and downs. I think from a physical standpoint, Atkins said like he's as good as anyone that they have. Like he is extremely coordinated. That's well documented with Chris Nee's infatuation with Byers. It's just more at this point like him getting more familiar with the offense, getting in a specific role. Here's something. Here's a little scoop. I've heard really good things about Bless Harris, like the last maybe week or so. And he was someone that I think they knew he was working his way back into shape after missing all of last season or most of last season. So we heard some good things late last week about him. I thought that his Thursday practice, I noticed him the most of any day this preseason in a good way, Zach. And it's tough to like watch every single rep and take it all in real time. We're not seeing instant replays and stuff like we would be able to in games. But like I sensed him doing a good job. And then apparently on Saturday he was one of their better blockers. So that's a name to keep an eye on. That just adds it. That's just another name in this competition. We still don't know what the future holds for Dimitri Emmanuel. He worked out with FSU on Pro Day, and that was done. We put on the Knowles 24/7 message board and assume most people listening are aware of this at this point. But if not, he worked out at the Pro Day, and that was done as kind of a precautionary measure for him. I don't know if that's the right word, but basically like he did not want to not be prepared for the NFL draft or undrafted free agent process if his waiver is declined. And he has some decisions to make because the draft is this month. And like I don't know what the exact deadline is, Zach, for him to like either be eligible to be taken or not as he's waiting. But as far as I understand, we're here on Monday, April 3rd. I don't know of any clarification from the NCAA on him. So that's just another guy when we talk about like potential competition in the offensive line room. He's not even really a factor right now. It's like you can't really plan for him one way or the other going forward. Lucas Simmons, I heard good things about on Saturday. I heard he's acclimated himself well. You saw some really good stuff from him this past week as well. So again, a common theme, dude, is like we keep hearing names or observing guys doing well during the week. And then when that falls over and carries over to the scrimmage, like I think that's a good sign of like, again, that trend of development that's encouraging.
Yeah, sounds good. I don't really have anything else to add, but
that was a lot on the offensive line. I need to clear my throat.
Moving over to the defensive line, sounds like multiple of the edge players had big days on Saturday. I guess just kind of who stood out amongst those guys.
Yeah, it sounds like Patrick Payton did well. I think Jared Verse was on a kind of a snap count early on. Byron Turner is a name that JP brought up afterwards. I heard that he had a couple sacks, but JP said that John Papucha said that Byron Turner's probably had his best 3 practice stretch since his time at Florida State, which is big because we like him, right? Like you and I think all of us, Dane, Chris, all think highly of his upside. But for him, it's about consistency, and like his bad reps can't be him getting completely taken out of a play. Yeah. And so for him to put together 3 good days in a row, Zach, with the departure of Derek McClendon, like that's the guy who's going to probably determine whether you have to go in the portal or not. Right. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he's your fourth guy in
yeah.
that room, so, um, yeah, I think it's important that he takes a step, and it looks like he's kinda risen to the occasion, which I
So
like to
far, he's
see.
at least responded well. Like, and this
Yeah.
is, I think, another big week. It's funny. Adam Fuller was talking about Quindarius Jones, and like for this being a big, this final stretch of spring being so big for him because it's going to kind of be multi-pronged. But one, you start getting those data points, and I'll get back to defensive line here in a second. But I think it's going to apply to what I'm saying on Byron Turner, and that's like with Q Jones, like what you need for him is to have a good final stretch here of the spring. So that way, then he takes positive momentum into the off season with the realistic feedback of like, hey, you could be someone who actually like projects as a rotational piece for this year as a true freshman. And I kind of have a similar thought about Byron Turner as well. Like this is a big stretch for him to show you that, hey, he with an increased workload will keep getting better. You can project him forward as being your fourth defensive end, as you mentioned, Zach. I think that's really important for him. And if he's able to deliver, here this week, there's going to be practices 10 and 11, then nothing over the weekend, I believe. And then you have 12, 13, and then 14 is the spring game the next week. So you have these next 5 practices to like really distinguish yourself and let the staff know like we are either comfortable with what we have developing at defensive end, or we may have to go and shore this position up in the portal. With that in mind, too, someone else they talked about, I don't know if you heard this or saw it, Zach, Jaden Jones. Were you familiar with what they said on him?
No, I did not.
Mike Norvell called him a quote unquote X factor. And that was just him being really pleased with his development as in the rehab process. As mind you, someone is out with what, ACL knee
Yeah,
injury?
ACL injury last fall.
Yeah, knee injury last fall in the JUCO ranks. I think kind of like, it was going to sound probably not the best way to phrase it. I can't think of a better way. I don't mean this like as a pessimistic way, but kind of like a blessing in disguise for FSU, because he's someone I think would have had potentially just such a high athletic profile, like that he might have started garnering interest from like the Auburns, Alabamas, and he's a kid from, I'm saying those schools because he's from
Montgomery.
Alabama. Yeah, he's from North Alabama. So those are schools that may have been more interested in him if he had a really big JUCO season. So FSU were able to kind of sneak this one under the radar. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say, Zach?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that throughout his process. And I think he's a guy that, it's encouraging to hear that he's going through the rehab process well, because if you just look at the measurables and you see him in person, he looks like he is a guy that would be a dude.
JP mentioned that he will just text. Jaden Jones will text JP plays of other defensive ends from practice asking for clarity, like what did this guy do correctly, or was this the right thing to do? Like not even his own stuff, obviously. He's going on his own time watching and asking questions.
That's awesome.
We saw him run at us the other day and then like almost hit us and change direction the last second. It was horrifying. And it was great that he was able to. I think it's a good sign for everyone involved that he was able to change direction.
Was he trying to show off, you think?
Maybe. Did you say anything bad about him? And he was like trying to like make like a point, like be like, "Yo, maybe."
No, I've been a big supporter.
And then I think he was just maybe running like a normal human being, and just we were maybe in his way. But what I was gonna say, that's a massive. He was a gigantic frame to be running at you. You forget how giant these guys are. He's probably like a foot taller than me.
He's like 6'6", I think, right?
Yeah.
You're like 5'3" or so. All right. Interior defensive line. Sounds like Daryl Jackson maybe had a better scrimmage than the previous weekend. And then another guy that you mentioned in your report was Dennis Briggs. What did those two guys do well?
Yeah, Dennis Briggs was very active on the day, and he's someone who, especially I think, if I remember correctly, I think my notes were that he was really good in passing situations and creating pressure, which like that's going to be his bread and butter. I think that's what he does particularly well, is create pressure from the inside, and has a good frame to him. And I think someone who is getting better as he's getting further removed from the leg injury last year. He looked the part, or 2 years ago, I should say. He looked the part last year just from a physical standpoint, but just the movement skills weren't what they were pre-injury. Yeah. I think we're starting to kind of get some of the feedback that it's getting in a good place. Daryl Jackson, I thought had a good week. It was important for him to have a good week coming back from kind of a lackluster scrimmage. And that was after like a really high standard was set for him, what he did before the scrimmage. Right. So I think you're kind of grading on a curve with him, because he's someone that internally, I think FSU thinks he could be legitimately special, right?
Yeah.
A shout out to the X's and O's guys for the Chris Jones. I was gonna say comparison, but I can't do that to them. That's not really what it was. But hey, you read a catchy headline that's gonna be controversial, fellas. Like sometimes there's gonna be controversy that comes from it. I've learned apples, sure you don't shake it if you don't want the apples, kind of deal. But one other name on the defensive front that I wanted to bring up, Zach, or two others, I guess. One, Ayobami Tafasi, someone who was quiet earlier on. Got to see him this past week, starting to kind of open it up a little bit, see some of that power. I heard multiple reps where he just drove back an opposing offensive lineman, and not like a walk on either. Like I won't say the name of the guy, but like someone who belongs here, and for him to be able to do that against a guy who's a little bit older than him, and like that's good. That's a good sign for him. Do you notice like Fabian Lovett's everywhere with him, like at practice? I've been told even at like outside of practice, Fabo's kind of like taking on a mentor role for AO. So I think that's a good thing that you're trying to help out someone who's further away from home and maybe hasn't always displayed a ton of comfort here and learning how to play football at this level. Fabo's a pro at this point, right? And so
he's a father.
Oh, he is a father. You're right.
Figure, yeah.
Yeah, he is. I didn't think of that. It's a great point, Zach. And so yeah, that's like a good dynamic that I think we want to keep following and tracking this spring. And then the last name was Josh Farmer, and he's fun to watch, isn't he? Like he was apparently great at the scrimmage, but he was great this past week. I think Mike Norvell referred to him as dominant. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to it was Keandre Jones on Thursday of last week after practice, and Dane actually asked a really good question. He asked like, who are some of your favorite matchups?
Wait, why'd you say actually asked a good question? Like you were surprised by that?
No, I didn't mean it as a
Dane. You guys would never guess that Dane actually did something worthwhile.
He finally. No, I'm kidding. Dane's been great. But he asked a question to Keandre Jones, basically. Who are some of your favorite matchups on the defensive line when you're doing one-on-ones and stuff? And he said Josh Farmer was the first name that came to mind, and he's a guy that really challenges Keandre. Just a technician, just really gotten a lot better in that aspect, and a guy that we've always known as a dude that's impressed in practice, and we saw some glimpses of that last season as a guy that really had to step up because of some injuries in front of him. But I think now with just how deep that room is, like he just gets to play at a super high level all the time because he's not having to take on as many reps.
I mean, that's a nice little element there, and I think that's by design of something that they want. But yeah, his good reps have been fairly close to elite. It was cool to hear Adam Fuller talk about him the other day too. Calling him, I forget exactly the way he phrased it, but basically he was like he had this level up process during the season, from the first game against Louisville when there were some injuries and he had to get in play a more extensive role to where he was at the end of the season. You saw big growth, like big in-season growth, and he says the growth from the end of the season to now has been almost as sizable. It's been like this like double up of progression. And we sense that, we see that at practice. Like he might be, Zach, the most consistent performer on the defensive line.
Where did he rank in your King of the Spring rankings?
He moved up. He was pull it up. He's easily in the top 5 right now. He may be in the top 3.
Is he your top defender?
Probably. Hang on, I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, I mean,
he's number 2. He's my top. He moved up from 4 to 2. So he's pushing Tron.
Don't creep up on Tron like that.
I mean, Tron had to jump from 5 to 1. Part of it was Well, anyways, we don't have to. You check that out. Knowles 24/7. No need to keep going into that.
Anything else to know on that group?
No. And if you want, I can speed things along, and I'll talk real quick about the other 2 position groups. So that way, we got Buyer Sonnone to play as well as recruiting stuff. Linebackers, I think we got to. We heard good things about Kalen DeLoach, DJ Lundy. Sounds like Tatum Bethune was limited. You know what you have with Tatum, right? But Brendan Gant had a good game, or good scrimmage, I should say. I think he had a takeaway. I think he was all over the place. Someone who is kind of understanding the nuances of linebacker now after moving there last year. And I think he's working to put himself in a position to where like if you had to, for a full season, him play one of the 2 inside linebacker roles, I don't think that's optimal. But like if you could find a way for him to be your third linebacker and be that guy who is able to like work in specific matchup dependent schemes where you're able to bring him off the edge as a blitzer. If you're you're playing a team out in space and you still want to have a 3 linebacker set defending space, like he offers you some flexibility there. And I think him playing at a higher level consistently is a really good sign for FSU, because that's hinting at linebacker depth, which I know is a steady cause of concern to the outside world. That kind of development is what you need to kind of erase those concerns. Omar Grand starting to kind of feel his presence a little bit more. He seems to be settling in. They're throwing a ton at him, giving him a lot of opportunities and at bats this spring. And then DeMarco Ward, I heard good things about in the scrimmage, and he was great on Thursday. And yeah, I asked Adam Fuller if they know if they can tell right now if they've hit on him. I wouldn't go quite that far, but he's doing a lot of things to where he sounds like he's on schedule as far as someone who's developing at this level. So I think that's good. That I would say, yeah, he belongs here. I think that's the best way to phrase it. He does seem like someone who the Power 5 game isn't too much for him. You have to see how he develops, whether he can be a good Power 5 player, right? But he does some things that instinctually are impressive and seems willing to be physical, and shows some athletic glimpses too that are there. There's one great play on Thursday where he shot a gap and diagnosed the play, shot the gap, I think it was Rodney Hill who got the handoff, and before Rodney could even get going, he stripped the ball away from Rodney. It was bang, 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 3 good things he did all in one short little skill set there. And apparently he was good again on Saturday. DB room, Jarian Jones continuing to have a really good spring. Fentrell Cypress as well. He's really kind of turned it on in the last week or so. I think he's starting to get comfortable, settling in some. Heard that Akeem Dent almost had an interception, couldn't bring it in. I know people are probably slamming their heads against the keyboard right now, listen to it, but it is what it is. It is good that he's in position. Quindarius Jones, consistently good things from him. He's performing well. They think very highly of him and what he can be. Yeah, I think that's it in the secondary right now. But it's kind of sum up the scrimmage. Listen, there's only so much, Zach, I think that we're going to take away the remainder of the spring. That's not to say there's not going to be important trends to follow and storylines that are developing. But in terms of knowing what this team is and what you have, I think it's I think there's a lot of known commodities here. We know what guys are. There's not going to be a ton of surprises at this point because they have so many guys coming back and we get to see them so often. I think we have a good pulse on what this team is, and it's a good one that's ascending, and we'll see if it can be great. But they are working towards that right now, and I think the scrimmage, the feedback from just the past week in general, being out there, talking to sources, all that good stuff, there's a lot of optimism right now, and things are moving the way they should be moving, the way you want them to move.
I need to start off by Sonnone with a question about the scrimmage.
All right. First off, shout out to Colin Turner of
the Turner Group. Sorry.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Zach. Colin Turner of the Turner Group. Colin and Amy Turner are a husband and wife team, FSU graduates. Amy back in 2006, Colin in 2005. Amy works with the sellers. Colin works with the buyers. They are a real estate agent company, realty. Where's the realty or real estate? Oh, sorry, Colin. Real estate company. There we go. I think there's actual thing to where only certain people can say realty, only certain can say real estate. I don't want to misspeak. I'm sorry, Colin. I'm way off the point here, but this is what you pay us for, is for me to meander about talking about your great company. Because the more I talk about it, the more time people get to listen to it. So anyways, I don't want people to hate you like they hate me. I'm going to stop rambling now. Their Turner Group is a 4-person agency in Central Florida under the Keller Williams umbrella. So what that means, Zach, they can help you out throughout the entire state of Florida. They're able to help you buy or sell homes, or at the very least kind of get you going in the right direction. If you're not in Central Florida, they can help you out. If you have questions about the ever-changing market of the real estate market, they can help you out. Colin, more than happy to talk to you. He's very responsive. He's awesome. He's been great to have in the fold here. Helps us do this silly little buyer Sonnone game. Someone who's just super into FSU football. I think you guys will enjoy talking to him, even just chatting FSU ball. If you have questions about a home buying process in the state of Florida, he'll be able to help you out. Play buy a Sonnone with him maybe on the phone. You can reach him, at 407-403-8546. That's 407-403-8546, or email Colin at getstarted@theturnergroup.com. Whew, sorry, a lot of information I want to get out there. And I'm drinking coffee, and the caffeine is flowing.
Buy or Sonnone? Is special teams a concern?
bye.
How come?
Um, I asked JP about his thoughts on the kicking game, basically like the last week or so, and then the scrimmage as well. And he didn't express concerns, so I think it's fair to like note like his what he's saying in that answer, and that's on YouTube. You can watch the video there. So I want to be fair to him and his thought on it. My feedback from what I could gather on the kicking game specifically, and I don't think it was bad this past week, but Saturday was not great. There was multiple misses by both the kickers, I think. Specifically, Ryan Fitzgerald did have a difficult time on some shorter ones. It was described as an adventure to me. I think, and those are live reps. I think how I feel about the kicking game right now, Zach, is it doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. Even though it's probably more efficient than it was, like, say, in season last year, it's a fairly low bar. And I don't know if I can tell you confidently like that's going in a direction that where I feel good about it. And that's just I'm trying to be transparent to our listeners and with the feedback I'm getting, what I'm observing, all that stuff. But JP's not worried about it. He thinks they're kind of on track right now. He's seeing things differently, process related than I am. So I think that's fair to mention. I also think that punt return, they lost Micah Pittman. I don't know if he's going to come back this season. I think that's the optimistic viewpoint of it, is that he will be available this season, maybe at the start of it, maybe a little bit into it. Talked to some people who aren't sure, like if that's going to be the case. And we just have to see how he develops from that or responds to that hip injury. Punt return has not given me the warm and fuzzies either in practice, Zach. So, those are two components that I don't necessarily feel great about right now. Not saying they can't get better. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to start ringing the alarms on it, but like for all the positive things that I'm seeing at practice and all the encouraging stuff I'm hearing and talking to sources, like I feel like the one that does not present me with a whole lot of like, calm down, it'll be okay, like we're good. And that's probably those two aspects on special teams. Again, early, we're 9 practices in. There's time for it to progress. But yeah, man, to answer your question, I'm buying that it's a concern.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a direct like solution to the kicking game. I mean, obviously they brought in Tyler Keltner this offseason as a walk-on addition, but it doesn't seem like, at least early on, that it seems like that Ryan is the guy for them. And I think for punt return, they're definitely working multiple guys there. I mean, we recorded every practice at the beginning of practice. It falls within one of the video periods. And if you guys are on the Noles 24/7 YouTube channel, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe. But yeah, they're working multiple guys. Azaria Thomas has been back there. Vandrevius Jacobs is a true freshman, has been back there. Winston Wright. Renardo Green was a new addition to that room this past week. That's all documented on video. So yeah, they are trying to find a solution, at least for the punt return worries and woes. But for the kicking game,
maybe Destin Hill can come in and return punts in May.
For the kicking game, disregarding that, for the kicking game, it's so weird to look at the rest of the team and just look at the ascension of pretty much every other position on the roster. And then you move to that position and it's just, it is what it is. Like, can't really go and you could go and add another scholarship kicker, I guess, if you're really that worried. But the way it seems right now, I don't want to like pound the alarm and beat a dead horse, but it just seems like a unit that doesn't fit in with the rest of the team.
Would you rather sound an alarm or beat a dead horse? Like what in the pecking order seems more panic?
Sounding the alarm would be less panic, obviously, but
really?
Than beating a dead horse?
I mean, beating a dead horse, I don't even know if it symbolizes panic, just means you're reiterating something. But sound an alarm, like everyone hears. If you're beating a dead horse, it's like only the horse and it's already dead. So like there's really not much harm done.
There are two different things. I'm just saying beating the dead horse because everyone knows that the kicking game was not good last year. But anyway, yeah, I think it just doesn't fit in with the rest of the team's ascension. And it feels weird that special teams is such a focus for Mike Norvell and the staff. I mean, they spent great deals of time in practice, working on all phases of special teams, creating different situations for these kickers to go through. And it's just weird to see that there hasn't been this improvement that position overall.
Buyer Sonnone, this is going to be from Matt329. Sponsored by the Turner Group, kind of in relation to what we were just talking about. Buyer Sonnone, FSU adds a kicker from the portal before the season starts.
I'm going to Sonnone just because, I mean, they've got a scholarship kicker already. They usually don't carry more than one scholarship player at each, kicking position. So one punter, one kicker is usually how it goes. And you load it up with walk-ons from what I've seen covering, these college football programs. But I think, if it really does become a huge concern, maybe they'll explore that option. But it seems like they're all right riding with Fitzgerald into the season.
Or Keltner. We'll see what Tyler Keltner does to
whoever
push
wins out the job, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with you, Zach. I'm Sonnone. I don't think that's something that's going to happen right now. I mean, we'll see, I guess, what the next, 6 or so practices brings. And again, the practicing last week wasn't bad by any means. There was one miss, and it was a blocked field goal. That wasn't the kicker's fault. But then you get into the Doak, and all of a sudden there's a few misses, and I can't put my finger on what's happening there. It's beyond my scope of expertise. I don't know. I just know it doesn't feel great. And from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound great. But we'll see. I know that's a source of panic for a lot of our readers because I could tell, and listeners, because I could tell going through this Buyer Sonnone, there's multiple kicking questions. It is amazing. Like, we'll give them 1,000 to 1,500 word practice report. Have a ton of fun writing those, and there'll be like a throwaway line like, kicking wasn't great today, or this wasn't great today. And that's the thing that everyone clings to. It's like, there's 900 words of positivity, but that 100 of skepticism is what everyone starts hand wringing about. But you know what? I think that's human nature. So that's not a judgment. We focus on the negative more than the positive. The big squeeze 3, Buyer Sonnone, Fentrell Cypress will be our best corner this year.
I'm going to Sonnone that. I'm saying Renardo Green.
So Renardo was FSU's best corner last year, returning. Fentrell was a top 5 prospect in the transfer portal coming in. I don't think Fentrell's been the best corner this spring. I think he's become increasingly steady. He might be one of the more consistent players on the roster. Mind you, he's learning a new scheme, new position, I guess, too. They have him working some nickel as well now. Adam Fuller talked about that the other day. So he's doing a lot of different stuff and handling it well. But, we're comparing that to guys who've been here for 3-4 years. I think a dark horse could be Zach. And I'm going to, you know what? No, I'm going to buy it. I think Fentrell will by the end. I think I've seen so much growth from him in a short period of time that I am confident that he will end up being the guy. But I don't want to discount, like, Jaron Jones has been really good this spring. He ended last year on a high note. He's playing with a level of confidence now that I think is impressive. So I feel good about those 3 guys as your primary rotation. We like what we've seen with Greedy Vance as well. But I think I'm going to go Fentrell Cypress. You're on the Renardo Green train, though.
Yeah. I just think he's been cornerback 1 throughout spring.
Here we go. This one's from NullFan 1999. He asked, Buyer Sonnone, we end up with 2 quarterbacks in the 25 class. So FSU has 1 currently. Zach, do you want to fill people in on that? FSU did get a commitment this weekend from a Jacksonville quarterback, Tramel Jones. Let's go ahead and talk about that for a second. And then I guess what the recruiting board looks like in 25 at QB in addition to Tramel.
Yeah, so Tramel Jones committed to Florida State, like you said, 2025 prospect out of Jacksonville Mandarin High School, an unranked prospect currently on 24/7, but that's probably just because 247 hasn't updated the 25 rankings a ton. As you know, the most of the focus is on the current class in 2024. But Tramel Jones has offers from the likes of Florida State, Florida, Miami, Texas A&M, I believe, is another one. Multitude of schools were interested in him early on. Visited multiple schools this spring, including Florida State multiple times. Came again this weekend and committed to the staff in person. We had gotten word of it via Steve Wiltfong a few days beforehand. Had everything prepared to go, and then he came outside the Moore Center on Saturday afternoon and told the media that he had committed. So big news for Florida State there as they continue to build out the future of that room. Obviously, you got Luke Kromenhoek committed, a top 100 prospect in 2024, and now you've got maybe 1 of two guys in the 25 class. I'm buying that they're going to get two. I think that's probably the goal right now. Um, you know, I think Tramel Jones, I wrote about this on Noles 24/7, makes a lot of sense for Florida State because he's a guy that I think was going to be okay with waiting his turn.
Hmm.
The room, when he gets there, it could be, veteran arms like Tate Roadmaker and AJ Duffy, multi-year guys like um, Brock Glenn, and then a guy like Luke Romanhawk who will have a year under his belt by the time Tramel Jones gets on campus. And by that time, I think a lot of us expect maybe Luke Romanhawk to be the guy to start that season in his second year in Tallahassee. And then Tramel's going to have a year, 2 or 3 to kind of develop under Mike Norvell and Tony Tokars and kind of work on his game to eventually become that guy. And I think that's the plus side of adding a guy like that is okay with waiting his turn and isn't a guy that's gonna freak out at the first challenge of maybe not getting his starting role right away, because I
Hmm.
think a lot of quarterbacks obviously, if they're highly touted at the high school level, they want to have that chance to compete right away. So yeah, I think that's why it makes a lot of sense for Florida State to land a guy like Tramel Jones, and I think they're going to continue to recruit the position. They're going to have a guy on campus this week, Cutter Boley. He's a 5-star prospect out of, I believe, Kentucky or Tennessee, one of those 2 states. I think it's Kentucky. I think he's out of Lexington. But yeah, he'll be on campus this week, and they've got a multitude of other guys that they communicate with pretty often. So we'll see kind of where the board shifts after Tramel's commitment. I know some quarterbacks like to be the only guy in a class. I think that's become a more common trend. But we'll see what direction Florida State goes with the rest of the targets in that class at quarterback.
I like Tramel's game. Don't know if I'm in love with it, but there's some projection of what he can still develop into. He throws off platform at a really high level, um, some really good precision passes, and he plays at a really good program. So I think he'll be developed at a high level too, Zach. I do want to see some of the, I guess, consistency, like just looking at the numbers. I think he completed 58% of his passes this past year, which is up from 55 as a freshman. Um, you want to be over 60%, I think, at the high school level. Like that's kind of like a magical number. So someone who's still developing, but you're starting to see like a lot of tools there, right? Like he's fairly athletic. I think Kev compared his upside to that of Jordan Travis, which I know sounds crazy thinking of that now, but like Jordan Travis's high school tape, there actually is a lot of similarities, a lot of good throwing on the run, some good precision on deep balls, like a lot of stuff that Jordan's good at now, maybe wasn't good at when he first got here. Is like a weird like setback for 2 years, well documented at this point, but like there's some similarities to their games as high school prospects, so I can see it. Um, we'll see whether he has the magic juice that the little fairy dust that sprinkled on Jordan Travis, like to make people miss, and that little like athletic like wizardry. But Tramel's a good prospect, a good guy to have in the boat right now. I think FSU sees a lot of value in having a long-term relationship with quarterbacks. We're seeing that pay off with Luke Romanhawk right now because he's been such a good what's the word I'm looking for? Like bell cow kind of.
Yeah, just ambassador.
Ambassador is the word I
Yeah.
was looking for. Thank you, Zach. Yeah, he's been such a good ambassador for this class, and there's a level of value to that, right? So it's important to get that relationship with quarterbacks, develop their trust early, and to your point, Zach, like that will help you if things don't go according to plan early, or if you're not on schedule, or even if just it takes you a couple years, that maybe would help like prevent a quick transfer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where they're trying to build something long term here, and they feel really good about Croman Hawk, and they feel really good about Brock Glenn too. So I think they think they can take a developmental guy like Tramel Jones. That makes sense. I'm starting to lose my voice. T Boston 99, Buyer Sonnone. FSU's defense will not face another offense better than what you missed a word there. Better than what they will face in practice all next season.
Who's up for contention for that? LSU, Clemson.
LSU, I don't think they're gonna have a great offense, but they do bring back their quarterback and start getting better at the end of last year.
Probably
Wake
Clemson, I would guess, is the next best.
Force is breaking in a new starter at quarterback and have
New
they have
OC, yeah. I don't know. I think their OC is pretty darn good, Garrett Riley. So,
FSU's going to have a top 10 offense this year.
yeah, I'm gonna buy that because I think FSU's offense is just that elite. But they're gonna face some decent offenses in Clemson and maybe LSU, and I'm sure there's another offense on the schedule that's going to be upper echelon.
Knowles, I'm with you, Zach. I buy for the same reasons you did. Knowles, 1981, Sonnone, Travis J plays meaningful reps this year. Going into the spring, I thought he was probably going to be trending to be like your fourth safety rotationally. Also known, I think some of that is that KJ Kirkland's coming on to where he'll probably be that guy you want to give reps to for the most part. Trying to think if I want to add anything more to that right now. I think that's probably it. We'll see what happens with Travis and his time here at Florida State in terms of just like development. And he wasn't eligible last year. Stayed really engaged. Give him a lot of credit there. I think a lot of this is going to be like his health and just how he's able to practice consistently. If he's able to, they'll have a chance. But you have someone so promising in KJ Kirkland. Like I'm gonna think you're gonna have a hard time not playing him when you get into garbage time type of stuff. And I think your three other safeties are pretty well set ahead of those two anyways. And you pretty much only play with three. Original 247, sponsored by the Turner Group. Sonnone, we see at least one more transfer out before the spring game. So not after. We will see certainly a lot after the spring game because you have to get under numbers. And I think I'll share this with the audience, Zach. I think there's an anticipation. I don't know what FSU is going to bring in, how much room they're going to have. December was a crazy time in the transfer portal coverage, well documented. You and I were on here looking like zombies. I think this April to May is going to be pretty active too. Last spring, that's some feedback I'm getting I think a lot of players will look around. Like look at Derek McClendon, for example. This is just in-house with Florida State. Looking around and thinking that there's going to be robust opportunities elsewhere, whether it's playing time, whether it's NIL, thinking there's going to be more. And whether that actually leads to that or not, I don't know. Because I don't know what the market will bring for him. I think he'll have good options. I don't know what that's going to lead to in terms of like NIL opportunities, but he'll probably go to a good like Power 5 program because he's at a premium position and he's a decent player. But I think a lot of guys are going to want to test the market this spring because they've seen what other transfers are getting, top line transfers are getting NIL opportunity wise. So yeah, I think it's going to look completely different than last spring, Zach, because of that reason. I think there's the market's the waters are still being tested. Everyone wants to go fishing.
I think the one interesting thing is I think there's going to be a lot of competition because a lot of these new coaches are finally getting to see their teams in person. Are going to be like, okay, we really need a guy at this position. Like I think Miami is going to be desperately wanting receivers, interior defensive linemen. I think linebackers another position need for them. Just reading some of their reports over there inside the U, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of teams that are desperate for certain guys at certain positions. So that makes me think that a lot of the priority guys are going to be. Those recruitments are going to be highly, highly contested. So we'll see. I don't know, where that leaves FSU and that market for some of those positions. But I think obviously Florida State's always going to be competitive in the portal, especially if they go hunting at the positions they want. Stop sending text messages.
Sorry, was that loud? Sorry. There's stuff going on. There's important things going on that are applicable to everyone involved.
Better get some Sunday tea.
Let me talk about that real quick. And I appreciate that you guys want Scoop and that you look at us as a site that gives that to you. I think we do it at a really high level. I take pride in that. The insider report that was dropped from the scrimmage was the tea. The information I'm now giving you guys now with extra elaboration is the tea. I'm not a machine, guys. I need to take a Sunday off and spend it with the family. You know what I mean?
I think you should title this podcast Sunday Tea.
Okay. So the rare Sunday tea that's on a Monday.
Yeah. Well, people wanted Sunday tea, so they're going to get it.
Sunday tea on a Monday. You're sassy.
You're sassy. You're the one clapping back at all the
I'm not clapping
all your supporters. They just desperately want to read your content.
I know. I appreciate it. It's just it's a lot sometimes. To answer the initial question, I don't think we'll see a transfer out in the next. We're talking about 2 weeks. I think we'll see a lot after. It's also known that we see one before the spring. There's nothing on the radar that I know of right now. Sonnone from Jamrock Knoll. This is also shout out to the Turner Group. we land one of Pickett or McCray. LJ McCray. Who's Pickett?
BJ Pickett.
The guy who's here this weekend.
Yeah, he's a really talented top 100 prospect at a Tampa Wharton. I'll buy that. I'll buy that they'll land one of the two. I think LJ McCray is more likely than Booker Pickett, just because FSU has been in that recruitment for longer and they've gotten him on campus more times, both in January and March, and they're going to try to get him back on campus for the spring game. So yeah, I like where FSU's moving in that one, but they're moving on up in Booker Pickett's recruitment. He's a guy that grew up rooting for Florida State, and Ohio State and Miami seem like the two main contenders for Booker.
Okay, let's see. I want to get to one or two more, and we've got a lot of good ones here today. I appreciate you guys carrying this because I didn't know if I would be doing this by myself or not. Zach jumped up to help out. But I want to get to some recruiting stuff with Zach as well because it was a huge weekend. JDS Knowles 97. Oh my God, that wasn't even the right number. JDS Knowles 1999. Where did 7 come from? Buyer Sonnone video content. It's this video content. It's a Sonnone.
Yeah.
Zach, you want to shout out some video content you'll be doing this Monday evening?
Yeah, tonight, me, Coach AB, and Kev are going to break down my top 10 most wanted recruits list that I just dropped, the mid-spring edition. If you haven't read that yet, go on noles247.com. It'll be up all day. And then tonight we'll break down some of the film of some of the guys on the list and kind of delve into some of the recruitments and drop some extra scoop.
Hurrying up here. These people are just all like shamelessly endorsing our sponsors to get me to read it, and it's going to work every time. Jordan W89, Turner Group, sponsored by the Turner Group, Buyer Sonnone. Celebratory Chattanooga whiskey is more likely to be consumed on 9/23 than on 9/3. So LSU more likely to be celebrating a Clemson win over LSU one. Yeah, I think LSU is going to be a better team than Clemson this year, is my thought. So I think it's more likely that you beat Clemson than LSU. So I'll buy that. And I think that Clemson. Remember last year against Miami, it just felt like that week of practice where like, oh, Mike knows he's going to do something here and he's going to like pull out all the stops on this one. Yeah. I get the feeling that Clemson's going to have that kind of vibe to it. I think this is the year where Mike thinks he can catch Clemson. And I think we're going to see a lot of time being like allocated towards like prepping for Clemson. And that's going to lead
to
all
season wise. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
think
so
and that's just a hunch. I'm not basing that on anything.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think they're pretty close in odds. Like, LSU neutral site in the state of Florida and then at Death Valley with Clemson, probably going to be pretty equal winning odds for Florida State. But yeah, I'll say the Clemson game is probably an easier win than LSU. I think that the LSU team is going to be pretty talented.
Okay. One more Buyer Sonnone, but this one's also super self-endorsement wise. Spaceman Spiff 3. He's been here for 162 months, and this is his first post. Color me skeptical here. Buyer Sonnone, OTB / the Battle's End puts out an OTB merch line, especially super soft and comfy shirts, both with OTB and Noles 24/7 logos, as well as any fun graphics you can create. I need a Chris Nee checks all the boxes, or B Son, do you like guys who could snap the ball shirt, or even a silhouette of the three of you on the bench by yourself. It's time to start monetizing this for OTB and NIL.
Hey, I'd be down. Are we allowed to do that?
I'm not sure. We'll check. It's a lot of things that we're allowed to do sometimes.
NIL deals and stuff, yeah.
But we are able to give a shout out to the Battle's End, which is doing a current promotion through the end of, well, I was going to say end of the month. That's not accurate. Through April 15th, through end of spring practice. Basically, it is a donor match program. I've heard it's going extremely well. They've had a private donor step up, Zach, who will donate, match basically up to $500,000 of donations that are being signed up now in this window. As part of that, if you're a listener, whether you're a current subscriber, someone on the fence for subscribing, if you do sign up with the Battle's End, you are eligible to get an on the bench Noles 24/7 subscription and basically a free month of Noles 24/7. We have details of it online on exactly what that entails, how you go about doing it. But long story short, Chris and I will be hooking you up with a behind the scenes like a free membership once all the dust settles at the end of this promotion. So anyone who, whether you want it or not, honestly, if you get the Battle's End, if you sign up with Noles 24/7 for a month, you get another one free. If you sign up for a year, you get a free month. Basically, it's a free month no matter what you do signing up with us. So shout out to the Battle's End. Sounds like they're doing really great work. in terms of this donor match segment right now, and we're happy to do our part in helping them out, helping out Florida State, and yeah, it's a great dynamic there between two brands, Zach. Two brands. All right, let's get into some recruiting news here. I want to thank everyone for all the buyers Sonnones. Unfortunately, couldn't get to all of them. There were a ton there today, but we do appreciate it. There's a lot of recruiting stuff from the weekend. A lot of big-time prospects were on campus. I know you did your top 10 today. You mentioned you're going to do that later today. So I don't want to tire you out too much right now. You've already taken a lot of time out of your day to help me out with this podcast. So we'll just go over kind of the quintessential stuff from the weekend, things that you find interesting. But you want to start with what's happening right now here on Monday, with who's on campus?
Yeah, so the number one safety prospect in the country, KJ Bolden, out of Beaufort, Georgia, made it onto campus, Florida State's campus, around midday today on Monday, and he's going to stay all the way into Tuesday, and he'll leave after practice on Tuesday. So he'll get to spend all of today. He's the only prospect on campus. I confirmed that. So he'll spend all of today with Florida State's entire staff. Spend all tomorrow up until the 4 p.m. spring football practice. Get to watch Pat Surtain, Mike Norvell, and the rest of the coaches go at it with their players. And then he'll depart campus after that. So FSU has ample time to make a really big impression on the nation's number one safety. It's an absolutely huge visit for a guy in KJ Bolden that grew up rooting for Florida State, but he hasn't been on campus since, I think, 2021. We were looking back at this, and I think it's from, I don't think he visited at all in 2022. And if you date back, I think it was probably the spring game of 2021 when he was last on campus. So it's been a while, but it's a massive visit as FSU looks to try and compete with other top powers in Bolden's recruitment, like Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson. Arkansas just got him on campus. Auburn might be a player as well. They just recently hosted him, and he said that felt like home. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think FSU has to make a huge mark here in order to really delve in or get into this recruitment. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he says afterwards.
Such a loaded defensive backboard for Florida State, but this is someone who you have to absolutely make a play for, because there is some level of mutual interest. And like you said, Zach, this is early on. Oh, not early on in the recruitment. It's almost like a reset. You're repositioning yourself here to get him for the first time since 2021. But Alex Atkins recruits Georgia. Pat Surtain, I think, gives you a shot of life on the recruiting trail. That combination, you're going to have to see how that works, but it's going to give you a chance. But yeah, he's a kid from, he's in the heart of SEC country with where he's located. Ohio State's hot after him. They develop DBs at a really high level. I mean, it's going to be a tough recruitment, but I was looking at his, not even his film, just his athletic testing from 2021. It's absurd. He's running 10.7, 100-meter dash in 2021.
Yeah.
Was he a sophomore then?
Yeah, it was sophomore. Yeah, 2021, he might have been, freshman, right? No, that's sophomore, because then 2022 was junior. Yeah.
And even his triple jumps, great. Everything he does is phenomenal. He is a legitimate athlete, and he's doing it at he's 6'1", 185. He's got good size, athleticism. Yeah, he's important to have at a position group where you can kind of be flexible and afford to kind of take your time recruiting this guy. You don't have to push for DB recruits right now, right? But this would be a statement for FSU if you can get him back again, which I think that's what you're trying to set up now, is a second one and then a third, and then you see what happens.
Yeah, you gotta secure an official visit. That's the biggest goal. I wrote about that, in something this morning. I wrote a ton of articles this morning, but in some portion of the KJ Bolden coverage, I wrote that they need to get him back for an official. That's going to be super important, kind of data point for Florida State in this recruitment.
A teammate of Tramel Jones, who was on campus, was wide receiver Jamie French, 2 Fs, right?
Yeah.
And he had some news afterwards I think was pretty noteworthy, Zach. One, I know you're a big fan of his game, but two, what was the news, and so I guess basically what do people need to know about Jamie French just as a profile, prospect perspective, and then what was the news coming out this weekend that they can check out more in depth at Noles 24/7?
Yeah, so Jamie French left FSU. It's kind of funny. He was doing an interview on the left. Tramel Jones was on the right outside of the Moore Center. Tramel was telling Chris Nee and the rest of the reporters there, "Oh, I'm committed." Jamie was, obviously right beside him, just talking about the visit. He said that Florida State now sits within his top 3 schools of his recruitment following the Saturday trip to campus, which is a pretty big deal. He's a 5-star prospect at Jacksonville Mandarin in the 2025 class, number 21 overall prospect in that class, according to the composite rankings. He said that really liked spending a lot of time with Ron Dugans, area recruiter John Papuchis, and even head coach Mike Norvell. We talked a lot about that conversation with Mike Norvell in his office and just about, how big of a priority French is for Florida State in the 2025 class. He says a possible return visit could be for FSU Spring Showcase on April 15th, which would be absolutely huge. I'm sure Tramel Jones is likely coming for that. And as FSU looks to, continue recruiting Jamie French, I mean, every time Tramel Jones comes on campus, it could be one of those deals where like, yo, Tramel, can you pick up Jamie on the way? Like, they have a built-in advantage there now. And I think that could be absolutely massive for their chances of eventually landing a talent like Jamie French.
I know you're a big fan of Jamie French and like you watch his highlights. So a lot of I think what stands out to me, like a lot of body control when you watch him.
Yeah.
But perspective with KJ Bolden. So they're both at the same classification when they're not currently, but this is 2021. KJ Bolden ran this, was the same age as Jamie French when he ran the 100-meter in 2022. KJ Bolden's nearly a second better.
Yeah.
He's 10.7 seconds and Jamie French is 11.6.
Yeah.
Jamie French is an elite athlete.
Yeah. 10.7 is like a ridiculous time. And Jamie French just does so many other things well. I've watched him on the 7-on circuit, and he's clearly one of the best players every time he steps out on the field. Like, it's super noticeable.
I'm not trying to knock Jamie French because his
like you're trying to knock him.
No, I'm not.
He's a full second behind him.
He is. I'm more trying to say that KJ Bolden is
KJ's
an athlete.
Yeah.
Like a Derwin James level, kind of prodigious safety. All right, just a couple more guys, Zach. I'll let you get out of here, and there's going to be more you can check out, but Knowles 24/7 is a great place for that. Let's talk about Christian Clark, running back from Arizona, came in to campus this weekend. We have some interesting intel on him, where FSU stands, and also some family connections that are worth mentioning, but a guy who seems to be trending up for FSU and vice versa, maybe?
Yeah, so Christian Clark, I didn't really know about his connection to Florida State before the visit, but it was pretty cool to find out. So basically, his mother attended FSU just as a student, and was talking a bunch afterwards about how much the campus has changed since she's been here. And then his uncle is Kenny Felder, who played baseball and football at Florida State in the 90s. I'm sure if you've been a longtime fan, you remember him, the guy that was a 2-sport player for FSU back in the day. So yeah, very, very interesting connection. And he's a guy that is all the way out in Phoenix, Arizona, but has those connections to Florida State. He said he spent a lot of his childhood in the Destin and Niceville area, on vacations and stuff, seeing family. He says he still has family over in those areas. So a lot of connections to North Florida in general. And I think that could play a role in FSU's eventual, competition in this recruitment. I think he's moved up FSU's priority on the running back board. I mentioned in previous months that Jordan Lyle out of St. Thomas Aquinas, the 4-star running back, was up there for FSU. Obviously, they already got one committed in 4-star Cam Davis, but Jordan Lyle is another guy, and then Christian Clark, I think, is right up in that top group of targets that FSU is trying to add into that running back room, and I think it's likely going to be a 2-man class. That's what they're aiming for. They're not just going to take anybody, but it's clear that Jordan Lyle and Christian Clark, now after this visit this past weekend, are among that top group of guys they want to add. And Christian, a really cool thing that I saw a part of his visit that I haven't seen FSU do with any recruit is David Johnson asked all 5 of his running backs to come over to the facility to speak with Christian Clark and his family. It was really, I was like, what are they all doing here? But then he explained it afterwards, because we literally saw them talking right outside the Moore amongst each other right after they had spoken with Christian, inside the facility. And it was just a pretty cool thing to see. I mean, Trey Benson, Rodney Hill, Lawrence Toafili, CJ Campbell, and Keziah Holmes were all there to speak with him and just talk about their experiences at Florida State and being coached by David Johnson and Mike Norvell. So I think that was a really unique portion of the visit that Christian, noted in his post-visit interview. You can go watch that on Knowles 24/7. It's on the YouTube channel as well as on the site. So a lot of content related to his visit, but yeah, I think FSU knocked it out of the park, and he said he's definitely going to try to make it back.
Let's see. I have two other topics I guess I want to go over. I'm trying to think of how to combine them. Is there anything, I guess maybe I'll ask it for you, or ask it this way for you, Zach, and we go from there. Is there anything more you want to add on Booker Pickett? You mentioned him earlier in the buyer Sonnone. Is there anything else we want to add on him briefly or more expansively? Expanded?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that FSU is in the early stages of that recruitment, so to speak. Like, I think they're going to need to get him on campus at least one more time to be a true legitimate contender. He was last on campus for the Clemson game last season. You know, can't really do too much recruiting on a game day visit. The staff can't. So I think this was kind of his first true recruiting visit of the past year or so with Florida State. He'll need to make it back. He said, you know, FSU's moving up the list and kind of becoming a more likely official visit destination for him. Not locked in or anything like that. He made it clear that, you know, it seemed like FSU still had a little bit of ways to go to become a place that he definitely knows he wants to officially visit. I think, like I said before, Ohio State and Miami are the two schools that I'm watching the most with him as the biggest competition for Florida State. They do have that kind of built-in advantage that he did grow up rooting for Florida State. His dad attended Miami, played defensive line there in the 90s. His uncle played at Ohio State. So those are the two connections that I'm referencing. And he said that he wanted to grow up the villain in his household by being the FSU fan. So that was a pretty cool part of the interview. You can watch that also on the No 247 YouTube channel. So yeah, just pretty cool stuff there with all the connections and things like that, and kind of his early fandom of Florida State. But like I said, want to see him get back on campus before I really consider him a realistic target for Florida State.
I want to give a shout out to Luke Kromenhoek. He was invited to the Elite 11s. Not a big surprise given his ascension. You guys know we've been fans of him for a while. FSU obviously fans even longer, and he's more recently gotten his national due as well. Andrew Ivins is a big fan of him, and I credit Andrew, like he's been ahead of the curve and ranking Kromenhoek as well. Andrew's really good at what he does. I know he'd like to. Our message board likes to give him shade for being a Miami guy, but he's exceptional at what he does. And so shout out to Luke and shout out to Andrew Ivins. How about both? Shout out to everyone. Wrapping this up here, Zach, last thing I want to talk about with recruiting, there was a handful of offers in the 2024 class that went out, which is kind of a weird time because it's like before spring ball, like really, really going underway, I think in most places. So usually kind of this isn't like the time of year, late March isn't when we see a bunch of offers, but there was a handful at one at wide receiver, a couple linebackers. I just want to get your thoughts there at those two developments and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I'll talk specifically about the two offers that went out to visitors this past weekend at Florida State on Saturday. One was to an offensive lineman in state, Andrew Jackson High School in Jacksonville, offensive lineman Derek Plaus. He's listed at like 6'5". I think it's 270 if I'm not mistaken. But the biggest thing is his growth. So Florida State was the first school to ever reach out to him and talked to him. Didn't offer him at the time, but Alex Atkins kind of made initial contact before any other college coach did, and he talked about that in his interview. But he's a guy that put on a ton of weight over the last year, and that's something that impressed Atkins a lot, apparently, on this visit. And because of that, they went ahead and pulled through with an offer. I think Miami and NC State are pretty involved here. I think Miami's pretty high on him, and then he's got an official visit set to NC State in June. I think FSU wants to work him out again, and he mentioned that he wants to do that as well. He said that he wants to come back because he was at the Seminole Showcase event last summer, and he said he wants to do that again in late July. So
I pulled it up his profile real quick, Zach, on that point. Yeah, he did the Seminole Showcase. That was in July. He was at FSU on August 27th, unofficially visiting, again on October 15th, unofficially for a Clemson game.
So that'd be, he was at
he's been 4 times in the last year.
So he's a guy that has been a regular, a guy that they've evaluated a ton. But it's really cool to see that, you know, Atkins is investing in a kid really early on, seeing him develop on his own and kind of put in that work by himself, and then kind of earning that offer from Florida State. Like, okay, we see what you've been doing. Like, you deserve this offer. So I think that was pretty cool. And then the other offer that went out was to a 2024 receiver prospect. I was really interested in this kid going into the visit. Apparently, according to Rusty Manziel at the Georgia 24/7 site, he said that at Georgia, he measured in at 6'3" and a fourth, 198 pounds with 10.5 inch hands, and ran a 4.51 40 on a laser time 40 at the UC report last month. Like out of high school to run a 4.51 laser is pretty impressive. What, Brennan?
Not to get you off track of his measurables, which are impressive. 4.51 40. I do want to elaborate. That is amazing. Did you say his name?
Isaiah. I was getting to that. Isaiah Kanayan, I think is how it's pronounced.
Did you just forget to, or did you just punt on it because you didn't think you could pronounce the name?
No, I was going to get to it, but I kind of wanted to lead things up and kind of explain some of the intrigue here.
So it's going to paint it on me messing it up and getting you off.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan.
You're totally going to bring it up like 40
so
seconds.
Florida State offered him a scholarship on Saturday. And I think, like I said, pretty intriguing measurables. I looked at the NFL Combine hand measurements from receivers this year, and he would have tied for first at the Combine with 10.5-inch hands. So pretty impressive stuff. And he's a guy that Florida State has apparently been evaluating for a while and talking to, but they invited him on campus and offered him in person. And he said he couldn't stop smiling basically after Mike Norvell personally extended him the scholarship in his office. It's a pretty cool moment for him. He's a guy that is a really great academic kid too. Notre Dame has offered, Vanderbilt has offered, Georgia Tech and Dartmouth, all schools that have extended him scholarships so far. This seems like a recruitment that's probably going to be like a Notre Dame, Florida State type right now. We'll see how much Florida State wants to push for him. Obviously, the evaluation period's coming up in May. All these high schools are going to get back into spring practice, and FSU is going to be able to get back on the road and see these prospects in person. And I think that'll probably be an important evaluation tool for them as they get to see him work out and kind of evaluate further whether they want to, move him up the receiver board. Obviously, it's an extensive board already, but a pretty cool thing to see that they're continuing to evaluate prospects and expand that board, despite it already being a pretty solid one. He's a guy that played quarterback and receiver at Warner Robins in Georgia this past season. And also played on defense and limited snaps and produced 6 tackles and 2 interceptions. So pretty impressive stuff. But yeah, those are the 2 offers I wanted to note.
Toolsy. He's a lot of tools. That's what Toolsy means. They offered some linebackers as well. Let's save that for. Why is that funny? What are you laughing at?
Nothing. Every podcast we record now is an hour and a half. I noticed that.
Well, it's because we record one a week, and when you have a
have so much
scrimmage,
to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry,
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's just funny. I don't remember the podcast ever being this long.
I don't know how you digest your podcast, Zach, but like when I listen to one, like I'll listen to the full episode. I may kind of like tune in and out like mentally throughout it, but like I'll listen to, like there's one podcast I like to listen to, like a movie review one. It's like 2.5 hours long. I know there's metrics out there that show like, oh, after an hour people will like move off, but I never leave a podcast. Like I'll just like, it'll finish, may take a day. So I've never understood like, oh, it has to be 45 minutes to an hour. Like it's like the content, like when we're done talking about stuff, it's more like, I want to make sure it's not dragging and I'm getting us way too off topic, which I know I can do, or like we have time, like just as working during the day, like 2 hours taking in the middle of the day is a lot of time, but I think it's fine to go long. That's what she said. If we have to, kid show.
Yeah. I mean, I think if it's all relevant content that people want to hear, excluding what we're talking about right now, then I think it's worth it.
So if you're spacing out now, it's not because it's an hour and 30 minutes. It's because we're not talking about FSU football stuff.
Yes.
But anyways, FSU offered some linebackers. I think we should talk about that. We'll say that for like the actual Noles 24/7 website. Like I will try to talk about a little bit of the expansion of the linebacker board, but you got your wish, Zach. You put it out there in the universe about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. All these offers came in. I'm not saying that you made it happen. I think that
I don't think it was a coincidence.
No. I mean, when Zach talks, like mountains move. I think that's the takeaway here.
Yeah, you need to start listening to that.
Before we go, why am I? Your headline here is Zach on the call here. I was gonna say Zoom. It's not Zoom, but on our YouTube channel, if anyone's watching, it's Zach and then it's Brendan's father underneath. What's happening there?
Because when I talk, mountains move.
All right, I am Zach's son, Brendan Sonnone. This has been On the Bench. Thanks everyone for listening. 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify, please. Don't do a 4-star review. Just do a 1-star or 5-star. I don't want anything in between. That's lame. Like, subscribe, thumbs up on the YouTube channel. That'll help us grow. We've had a lot of growth on the YouTube channel. Appreciate that. And check out Noles247.com if you've been on the fence. Right now, you're getting a month free if you sign up with the Battle's End. So sign up with the Battle's End. Help out FSU football players. Help out Noles 24/7. Everyone wins. For the Mountain Mover, Zach Blostein, I'm Brendan Sonnone. Has been on the bench. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next time.